In today's gospel, the cast are 2 real people and 4 or more fictional people. The 2 real people, of course, are the scholar of the law, a lawyer, intelligent, and Jesus. And the lawyer asked Jesus a question, and Jesus answered with the question. The lawyer said, "What must I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus said, "What is written in the law? How do you read it?" Very typical of a rabbi. Rabbis often answer questions with questions. In fact, there was a young man who asked his local rabbi, "Rabbi, why do you always answer a question with a question?" He replied, "Why not?" Okay. I often wonder about this scholar. It says he was trying to test Jesus. Was he hoping to catch him with the wrong answer, with a heresy, whatever? But when he gave the answer, it was the perfect answer. I mean, right out of the Bible, the Jewish Bible. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, being, and your neighbor as yourself. And he could have walked away saying, "Well, I got the right answer, and Jesus commended me." He said, "You've got the right answer, young man." But then he wanted to probe deeper. Maybe see what else Jesus had to say. So he says, "And who is my neighbor?" You know, I wish Jesus had introduced the parable of the Good Samaritan to this scholar in this way. I'm going to tell you a story, young man, and there's going to be 3 characters in it. One of them is going to be the hero. There's going to be a priest, a Levite, and a Samaritan. Which one do you think will be the hero in my story? I'm sure the scholar would have said, "Well, certainly not the Samaritan. You know, we Jews don't like Samaritans. They're horrible people. They're half-breeds. They're no good. He will not be the hero." I can't wait to see whether it's the priest or the Levite. Tell me your story. So Jesus tells the story we just heard. We call it the parable of the Good Samaritan. How shocked that scholar must have been when he heard that the Samaritan was the hero of the story. As I said, Jews were told not to associate with Samaritans. They were Jewish Samaritans, but kind of half-breeds. They kind of watered down some of the Jewish faith. They practiced some of the pagan cults and so on. And so they were hated. And yet in the story, Jesus made this man, the Samaritan, the hero. How shocked this lawyer must have been. But what about the 2 other guys, the priest and Levite? Why did they pass by this poor man beaten up and dying? Well, there's several answers. They were religious people, men of the temple, a temple priest and a Levite. And maybe they thought, well, you know, we have to get to the temple on time. If we stop and help this man out, you know, we're going to be late. We can't be late, so we're just going to ignore him, pass by. Maybe they were afraid of becoming ritually unclean. There are many things that made a Jewish person unclean. For example, eating unclean food like pork, or touching blood because blood was the source of life, or touching a corpse. So they thought, well, you know, if we touch this man, we get blood on our hands, or if he dies while we're trying to take care of him, we'll be unclean. To be unclean meant that you had to absent yourself from the community for 24, 48 hours, go through some ritual cleansing and so on. They didn't want to do this. So because of the laws that they knew so well as a priest and Levite, they ignored the man. They left him there. You see, they were obeying the letter of the law and forgot about the law that's written in your heart. As we heard Moses say in the first reading, the law isn't in the sky, the law isn't across the ocean, the law is right there in the heart. The Samaritan, he probably knew the laws too, because Samaritans were Jewish people, but he listened to the law of his heart, and he helped this man out. Perhaps saved him from actually dying. Again, a fictional parable. But the point is there. Who is our neighbor? Everyone is our neighbor. But back to those 2 men, the priest and Levite. They listened to the law written and ignored the scene right before them. Reminds me of a true story. I think I've told it before, but it's so apropos for this gospel today. My first assignment some 50 years ago was at St. Anne's, and there was a gentleman there. He was a lawyer. In fact, he was a judge, and he lived a block and a half away from St. Anne's Church. And he used to walk to Mass every Sunday, and he'd get there about 15, 20 minutes early. So one Sunday, he was walking to Mass. I was in the lobby of the church. I wasn't presiding. I was in the lobby. Not to catch latecomers, because that's not my style, but just to greet people. So this lawyer, judge, was walking to St. Anne's. He saw this woman sitting on a curb, and he went over and says, "Is everything okay?" And as he talked to her, he realized she probably was having a heart attack. So he ran back to his house, got in his car, came back, picked up the woman, took her to Sunrise Hospital, and probably saved her life, and then came back to church. Now Mass had started and was like 15 minutes into Mass. In those days, we used to emphasize a law that said, if you miss the readings in the Gospel of the Mass, you commit a mortal sin. So you have to go back and do another Mass because you missed the most important part of the Mass. So after telling me this beautiful story of saving this woman's life, this lawyer judge said to me, so Father, have I committed a mortal sin? I wanted to beat him up. I said, sir, I used his name, I said, you have many options. You could have seen the woman sitting on the curb and realized you got to get to Mass and say your prayers before Mass starts, so just ignore her, walk by on the other side, like the priest and Levite. Or you could have stopped and saw the woman was in trouble, having a heart attack, and say, well, ma'am, you know, I'm a Catholic, I have to go to Mass. Can you hold your heart attack for about 90 minutes, and then I'll come back and get you up? Or you could have said, I'm Catholic, I have to go to Mass, that's our obligation. Maybe some Protestant will come by and help you. I hope so, good luck. Or you could have ran back to your house, in your car, picked the woman, took her to the hospital, and saved her life. Of course you didn't commit a mortal sin. You saved a person's life. That's a virtuous act. So that's what the gospel is all about today, to listen to our heart. I think one of the most common gifts that God has given us is the gift of common sense. Common sense. You know, the law, the Ten Commandments aren't written on our heart. But I think common sense, the law of love is written on our heart. We all know what's right and what's wrong. And so we are challenged. The laws are there, policies, rules, regulations, they're there to guide us in normal times. But when times are exceptional, when someone's in trouble, when someone's in need, don't go look at your law book. Listen to your heart. And again, who is your neighbor? We're all children of God. Every single human being ever born, ever to be born, is a child of God. That means they are our brother and sister in the human family, and they are our neighbor. Some people say, I love my neighbor, my wife, my children, my friends. Of course, it's easy to do. Everybody loves those they like, who love them back. But Jesus challenged us to love the Samaritans in our lives, those we don't like for whatever reason. Sometimes it's such a petty reason. There's a name for that. It's actually a sin. It's called prejudice. Judging people before you even get to know them by the skin color, their ethnicity, their accent, their sexual orientation, their wealth status, whatever. We judge them as not good enough for us. They're a Samaritan according to us. Stop that. All are our neighbors. All, especially people in need. Don't pass them by. Don't ignore them. Don't come up with excuses. Be there to help that person. The lawyer answered it correctly. Love God. Love your neighbor as yourself. It's as simple as that. Not always as simple to do. Love God, love your neighbor.